Episode 4 of King the Land begins with Gwon-won walking away dejected from the sight of Sa-rang and Yunam hugging each other. It is an especially infuriating scene because it is evident that Yunam has just fit his apology for Sa-rang into a schedule, and he doesn't mean a word of what he says. Yunam comes across as the kind of guy whose only commitment is towards his social calendar, and everything, even his girlfriend's feelings, are something to fit into a schedule without any actual regard for them. Sa-rang breaks up with him and walks off, determined to get over him. Meanwhile, Gu-won is driving back home and is in disbelief that he is jealous. He looks at himself in the mirror and asks himself why he out of everyone is acting in such a way. And throws the macarons he got for Sa-rang out of his car. Right then an officer arrives to fine him for littering but understands that Gu-won's behavior was a result of heartbreak and begins giving him advice. The cop ends up going in a long tirade on how she is probably using one because he is rich but he cannot see it as he is whipped. The cop starts crying over the woman that he let go, which he regrets, and one comforts him by giving him the macarons. Gu-won soon clears up his misunderstanding and tells him about his crush, to which the officer advises him to not give up so soon and give it a try. Tears are abundant as Sa-rang is also busy crying on her way home. She goes to meet her grandmother the next day and helps out at her restaurant. Her grandmother wants her to get married and disapproves of Pyong-hwa as her friend since she is also unmarried. With grandma asking about marriage and packing side dishes for Yunam, Sa-rang reveals they have broken up. The grandmother supports that decision, knowing all too well that her granddaughter would never do anything wrong, and tells Sa-rang she deserves a good man and to never bottle her feelings in. On the other hand, Il-hoon is angered to find his competitor surpassing King the Land in sales and pressurizes Gu-won and Waran to bring up the sales. Later, Waran tells Gu-won to stay out of this matter as she will take care of it, while the latter once again tells her to not fear him. Waran keeps mocking Won and tells him to stay out of it as he has no power. He is annoyed that she looks down on him, and he remembers drunk Sa-rang saying everyone deserves to be treated fairly. At work, Sumi is jealous and claims Sa-rang will be kicked out soon. But the VIP lounge's manager, John, is super friendly. She shows Sa-rang the ropes and cheers her as she trusts Gu's judgment on promoting Sa-rang. She advises Sa-rang to not pay heed to others, who may try to pull her down. Concurrently, Sang-sik begins to panic about Gu-won's inactivity in responding to First Royal Hotel's recent revenue success. Next, Gu-won bites back at Sang-sik, frustrated that his assistant joked about his affection towards Sa-rang. John and Sa-rang enter and Won suddenly gets nervous. John introduces her as VIP staff and Won picks on her. He claims Sa-rang needs extra training as she is unsophisticated, and when she leaves he sighs. However, Sang-sik sees right through him and calls him a pathetic kid for picking on his crush. Though Sa-rang's new supervisor says that she trusts the chairman's judgment in promoting her, her colleagues don't feel the same. They are angry because they believe she is not as qualified as them since she only attended a 2-year course. Meanwhile, Waran cracks down on all the departments, assigning a new manager to the duty-free shop and telling Pyong-hwa's team to double up their in-flight sales. She even gets rid of anyone who is not dressed properly. In general, she tries to portray that she does not take low revenue lightly. Sang-sik feels intimidated by her work and warns Gu-won to be as meticulous and improve his work image, and tries to get Won to strategize on King the Land's revenue. When Sang-sik tells Gu-won about this random firing and coercion, he looks back at what Sa-rang had said about jobs for people like her. While wealthy people like Gu-won need not care about it, those like her need to. So, he organizes a meeting of King the Land staff members. There, while sneaking glances at the object of his affection, he also approves a plan to increase revenue at the lounge by promising to financially incentivize them should they reach their performance targets. This annoys Waran since he has done something independently. That night, he texts Sa-rang that they need to talk and immediately regrets it. However, he keeps waiting for her response all night as he does push-ups, plays games, and even makes sure he has network. Frustrated, he decides to call her. Turns out, while he has saved her contact as phony Cheon, she doesn't even have his number. So, of course, she cuts the call from the unknown number and goes back to worrying about the new sales goals with Pyonghwa. Pyonghwa and Sarang believe that Daeul has it all, but they don't know that at her house, her in-laws take her for granted, and her sister-in-law always freeloads off of her. Her husband doesn't seem to be of much help either. The next day, Gu-won is distressed when he gets no reply and directly goes to meet Sarang. He asks her about his calls and messages only to find out that she doesn't have his number. He then tries to ask her out to dinner, only to be rejected by her again and again. She just doesn't want to eat with him alone and he is left speechless. Gu-won tells Sang-sik that he needs to invite her to a welcome dinner and make sure she shows up. He doesn't try to hide his feelings as he tells Sang-sik he needs to have dinner with Sarang. One tells him to set one up under the pretense of a welcome dinner. At King Air, the pilot hits on Pyonghwa but she rejects him. He threatens her, but Rowoon arrives at that moment. As the pilot leaves, Rowoon checks up on her. He then asks her out for dinner and she agrees. She thinks he is being friendly to get promoted and tells him he is cozying up to the wrong senior. He says he doesn't care and she is flustered. She tries to set him up with their colleague, Mina, but he says he is more curious about her. As Pyonghwa and Rowoon grow a bond over a meal, Gu-won's suddenly planned welcome dinner for Sarang proves a disaster as Gu-won makes his way to dinner with Sarang only to find out that Sang-sik has invited her whole team for dinner. As they sit down to eat, one notices that Sarang has not touched her food, which is Japanese cuisine. He orders Sang-sik to get steak from the restaurant next door as she cannot eat raw fish. The VIP staff is shocked and one even goes as far as to ask Sang-sik to cut the steak for her. Sarang stops him loudly and takes a huge bite as one waits while the seniors mock her. She is embarrassed and calls him out of the room and makes sure he understands that all of his gestures are putting her in a spot, wanting the hotel head manager to act like he isn't aware of her going forward. He, however, doesn't understand why she is upset as it was a kind gesture. At home, Daeul and Pyonghwa surprise her with cake as it turns out to be her birthday at midnight. They gift her sexy lingerie and she awkwardly tells them that she dumped Yunam. The girls understand the situation and divert it by partying with no bounds. Gu-won, however, cannot stop thinking about Sarang's comment. Meanwhile, Sang-sik gets Sarang a buffet voucher as it is her birthday, which is news to one. He heads inside to see Waran holding the pocket watch. One snatches it from her and tells her that the only reason he isn't fighting her is because he doesn't want to. When Gu-won is warned not to end up like Mother by Waran, noting she isn't remembered by anyone, it triggers a memory of how his sister would always taunt him. In particular, he recalls how his older sibling attempted to discard his mom's pocket watch purely for her own personal enjoyment. For Sarang's first guest, senior staff member Seho orders her to stay quiet. It is Chairman Han, his wife, and Chairman Gu. They ask for a wine recommendation but don't have time to wait for a sommelier. Seho says any wine will do and Han remembers Sarang. As a two-time winner of the best talent, they ask for her recommendation. She goes above and beyond by even describing the wine as she is a certified sommelier. Gu is impressed while Seho scolds her for not recommending a much more expensive whiskey bottle. She points out that he too recommended wine and he deflects. Meanwhile, one even goes through the paper records but cannot find anything on Han Miso. Outside, Yunam shows up with flowers and a reservation to a fancy place. He thinks Sarang dumped him over Gimbap and she is furious. She says she is tired of him acting selfish and dense and walks off. At the end of the episode, she leaves walking in the rain to her safe spot, which happens to be the same as Gu-won's. She's crying without an umbrella and before she knows it someone's shielding her from the rain. It's Gu-won and he tells her that that is his spot. She's about to leave, irritated by his presence, but she trips and he catches her. The episode ends with the two staring deeply into each other's eyes.